Right, we're now live streaming, so the meeting has begun. Good evening and welcome to members, officers, the press and public joining the Strategic Development Committee. This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so a very warm welcome to those joining us online. To minimise travel and maintain social distancing, most officers joining this evening's meeting via Zoom. Can I check everyone present can hear me?
Yes.
And those online, can you give me a wave if you're already able to hear me? Great, thank you. My name is Councillor Rachel Tripp, and I'm the Chair of Strategic Development Committee. I'll be chairing tonight. I just want to apologise. I've been recovering from COVID, so I'm still coughing a little bit and clearing my throat. It's been ages. I'm not contagious, but if I am sort of coughing away, then that's why. Sorry about that. For members in the room, when you're speaking, can you please speak clearly and loudly so that the microphone can pick up what you say? And for those joining us by Zoom, please mute your microphone if you're not speaking. I'm now going to ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves. Councillor Morris.
My name is John Morris, Councillor for Plaster West Companies, and I'm a member of this committee.
My name is Mohammed Ghani, Councillor Mohammed Ghani. I am a member of the Berlin Ward and a member of this committee.
Councillor Mumtaz Khan for Green Street West.
Thank you. And can I ask officers to introduce themselves? And I suggest that we go in the order on which people appear on the agenda.
I'm Jane Custance. I'm the Director of Planning and Development.
Hello, I'm James Bolt. I'm Senior Development Manager.
Hello, I'm Amanda Campbell. I'm Head of Planning Law.
Hello, I'm Dan Lake, Principal Planner.
Hello, I'm Rajvinder Kaur. I'm a Principal Planner.
Thank you. And did you want to introduce yourself as well?
My name's Joy George and I'm the clerk to the meeting. I'm the services.
Thank you. I just want to remind members that, as usual, when a vote's taken, it will be by way of physically raising our hands so that you can see that on screen. Item number 1 is apologies. I have received apologies from Councillor Joshua Garfield and Councillor Carleen Lee Parkway, both of whom are running a bit late, but will be joining us. I think we've also received apologies from Masawa and from Harbinder.
Yes, Chair, that's correct.
And I believe that Councillor Sally Ponton is still unwell.
So we called her.
Great, thank you. I don't think there could be any further apologies. I think there might be every member, either with apologies or in the room. Item number 2 on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of January 2023 for approval. Before we approve those, I just wanted to note that some action points which are draft to chase up have been left in error. Those are the text in red, so we'll be removing those and we'd be approving the minutes without those action points in. That said, does anyone have any other items of accuracy or amendments or notes to make about the minutes? Thank you. Can I ask then that those minutes are approved as a true record?
Yes.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for tonight?
Sure.
Thank you. Item number 4, determining planning applications. Members are asked to note the advice from the Head of Legal Services. Is this noted?
Noted.
Noted.
Thank you. Item 5, announcements from the Chair. Committee has received the following requests to address the committee. Could the speakers please identify themselves when I call out your name? So item 6, Elmhurst Primary School. We have Richard Gillanders.
That's me.
Great, thank you. We also have Shahed Ahmed.
Yes, hi. So sorry,
Hello.
I'm not London North East Maths Hub, as it says on there. That's not my name. So my name is Shahed, and I'm the Executive Head at Elmhurst Primary School.
Great, thank you for joining us. And for item 7, I've got Mazhar Ali from LBN.
He can't get on the call. He says he's waiting in the waiting room, that the host will let him in.
Oh, he's not in the wait. Can you try again, please? Come out and try again, and then I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught that. He's not in the waiting room, so perhaps
he might be now.
Oh, maybe he is now.
No, he's not. He's gone again.
We will keep an eye on the waiting room, and as soon as we can, we will let him in. And we also have,
He's here, there he is.
great. And we also have Alex Jones, who I can see has joined us. Hello, Alex. So the usual practice is to allow up to 5 minutes in total for both supporters and objectors. Is that agreed?
Yes.
Thank you. Would members please note the officer update report, which has been circulated. So please note the full consideration and planning assessment of matters is covered comprehensively in the committee report. I know that members will have had full regard to the committee report, so the officer presentation will be a summary of the key issues only. So can I please call upon the applicant's team for item number 6, Elmhurst Primary, to address the committee. I can give you 5 minutes, and I will start a timer and endeavour to let you know when only a couple of minutes are left.
We are here primarily to answer any questions the committee may have.
Shall I give a very quick overview of what the build involves and the purpose of the build? So
yeah, of course. Or you're welcome to just be available to answer questions if you prefer.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind just giving a very quick overview so that yeah. So,
no, absolutely. We'd be happy
right.
to hear from you. Please do go ahead.
It'll take me sort of a minute or so, but yeah. So we're a large primary school with about 980 children in just off Green Street in Forest Gate. We're an outstanding school. We've been so for 15 years. We were recently re-Ofsteded last year and retained the outstanding, which we're very pleased about. Basically, a lot of schools, including ours, have increasing numbers of children with special needs, and that's been ongoing. It's been a real challenge for schools to cater and to address those needs. We've been a large school. We've got far more special needs children than we've ever had before. So we want to do something about it. And what we're planning to do, hopefully, if you agree, is to have this new build, which would be a dedicated space for those special needs children, many of whom are autistic. Some of them have Downs. Some of them have medical needs, some physical needs. And this new building would have dedicated teaching space because a lot of them have one-to-one support with teaching assistants. There would be a sensory room, which it's got light and sounds, and it really for those children that are non-verbal, it would really help them. And a mobility room, so it would have sort of the slides and the cushiony areas for those children to be in, as well as a hygiene room. And the idea is that they would spend some of the time within this unit, which is within the school building itself, within the school grounds, and then they would go back into class so that they're not completely separate. But we really feel that this would really add value to the children who are the most vulnerable to our special needs children. So that's the kind of the purpose of the build. But I'm happy to answer questions along with Richard as well, if you have any.
Thank you very much. What I think we will do is we will hear from the officers, and then we will have questions from committee members, and those might be questions for the officers or they might be for you guys as part of the applicant team, and I'll direct them accordingly. So thank you for attending. Could I pass over to Daniel Legg, the officer for this application?
Thank you very much, Chair. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
That's great. So item 6 relates to Elmhurst Primary School, located on Upton Park Road in Forest Gate. Slide 2 shows the site location and recent aerial photograph. The site is located in a largely residential area, with Elmhurst Road to the north, St George's Avenue to the east, and Upton Park Road to the south. The application in question seeks planning permission for the erection of a single-storey detached SEN building, consisting of classroom space, a mobility room, counselling room, sensory room, office space, and ancillary facilities. The proposal would be located on the southern boundary of the school site in alignment with the main school building. Slide 4 shows the main school building and location of the proposal when viewed from Upton Park Road, whilst slide 5 shows the site in the context of the wider treaty. Slide 6 provides elevational and sectional drawings of the proposal, whilst slide 7 provides a layout plan of the proposed building. With regards to principal development, use of the site for educational purposes is well established. The current development plan is supportive of providing additional educational and community facilities to ensure the current and future needs of the borough are met. The proposal would provide permanent dedicated classroom space for SEN sessions and also provide specialised sensory and mobility rooms that would be difficult to retrofit within the existing school buildings. The proposal would allow for SEN sessions to be incorporated within the day-to-day operations of the school, rather than on an ad hoc basis as existing. The facility could also be utilised by those with SEN needs in the wider local community as part of the school's community access statement. As such, the principle of the development is considered acceptable, subject to compliance with other planning considerations to be addressed. With regards to urban design, the size, scale, roof typology and visual form of the proposed building would be in keeping with the existing built form within the school site and would provide consistency to the appearance of the street scene given its location and external finish. To ensure a high quality finish to the proposal, conditions requiring external material samples and window and door details to be provided have been secured. To enhance the appearance of the school site and wider street scene, a soft and hard landscaping scheme would also be delivered. This would provide a soft buffer to the front of the site and would also upgrade existing palisade fencing to wood mesh fencing, offering additional consistency to the frontage of the site as well as security. Full details of the landscaping scheme, including planting schedule, have been secured via condition. Officers are encouraged by the use of PV roof panels in supporting sustainable development. As such, the design of the proposal is supported subject to conditions. In relation to the impact on neighbouring amenity, the proposal would consist of a single storey and would be separated from adjacent residential properties by vehicular highway. The scale of the building and separation distance would be sufficient to ensure no adverse overshadowing or loss of light would affect neighbouring occupiers. No windows would be installed within the front elevation of the building, and as such, no adverse privacy concerns would be raised in regards to the aforementioned neighbouring occupiers. The SEN building would be used during established teaching hours and would not generate inappropriate levels of noise within the residential area. To ensure construction noise does not occur during antisocial hours, a condition restricting the hours of construction have been secured. The proposal is therefore supported with regards to the impact on neighbouring amenity subject to conditions. In relation to transport, the proposal would not result in an increase in pupils accommodated in the school, and therefore there'd be no uplift in vehicle movements to the site. The SEN building would be located within the existing staff car park, and this staff car parking would be lost but accommodated elsewhere within the site. Additional cycle parking would also be secured by way of condition to ensure that current London plan standards are met. Similarly, a school travel plan would be brought forward to encourage the use of sustainable transport modes. The proposal is therefore supported with regards to sustainable transport subject to conditions. Other considerations, the application falls outside the scope of the Epping Forest Mitigation Strategy, and therefore no planning conditions or financial contributions have been sought. To conclude, officers request that the committee resolve to agree to the reasons for approval set out in the officer report and delegate to the Director of Planning to grant planning permission subject to the conditions listed in Appendix 1 of the committee report. That concludes my presentation, and I'm obviously happy to take any comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just ask you, there we go, stop sharing your screen so that I can see the gallery again. We'll move to the section of the committee for questions. I can see that Councillor Morris has already got his hand up. I've got some questions as well, but I'll put it open to the floor first. We have been joined by Councillors Lee Parkway and Councillor Garfield, who unfortunately have arrived partway through this item, so won't be voting on it as they won't have heard all of the presentations. Sorry about that. I think, though, that they are able to ask questions. Amanda, is that right?
No, I see no reason why they can't raise questions, but not vote, unfortunately.
Right. Yep. In which case they may be asking questions if they have questions, but won't be participating in the vote. Councillor Morris.
I have two questions. One, I'd like to refer members to page 43, paragraph 8 of the report that mentions there's no reduction in car parking, and instead what it aims to do is reallocate parking spaces. Would what either the applicant or Dan would just go through with me, like where these places are going to be relocated from, or allocated? And my second question is, Dan's presentation mentioned community usage. If either the applicant or Dan can provide more details on what type of community activities we can expect, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps I could ask the applicants to tell us about where the staff car parking spaces are being relocated to. Is that a loss of play space within a site that's quite tight already?
No. So we had a caretaker's house, and the caretaker hadn't been living in there for a number of years. It was in quite poor condition. So that's been demolished, and the car park has been shifted along. So there's no playground space that's been taken away. It's just shifted along to where the caretaker house was. The only concern was making sure that the caretaker wasn't in there when the house was being demolished, but we made sure of that.
I guess I'd just like to push you a little bit further on that. I think you have, is it 43 staff car parking spaces? Are you really confident that that's a good use of your space on a site with lots of children who might not have very much access to outside space at home, and that might have quite constrained access to play space as well?
That's a good question. So we're very fortunate in that we have two large playgrounds, and we've done some development in providing climbing equipment and dedicated play areas for the children. So no, I mean, this building isn't taking up any of the space that's been available for them. And yeah, I mean, I think if we'd had much smaller playground space, then we would be thinking about opening that up for the children. But we're very lucky in that respect, and that's why it allows us to do a building of this size.
Just one supplementary question.
Go ahead.
So there's for visitors as well, but these parking spaces will be also for teachers. Can you provide more details of where your teachers will be travelling from?
So they, I mean, like any school, they travel from, I think a lot of teachers come from places like Ilford, Redbridge, some further afield. They don't all come by car. Many of them, use public transport. Some cycle, like I do. So it's a mixture. I mean, I think that particularly because there's a lot of restriction around the surrounding roads now. I mean, it's all permit parking. So it's something that we do like to provide for our staff, not just for teachers, but for support staff, teaching assistants as well. So yeah.
Also, my second question wasn't.
And John's second question was about community use. Was that a question to the officer?
Yes, it was.
So there would be an opportunity possibly to allow other schools within the area and their students to make use of this SEM facility, particularly schools that may not be fortunate to have the infrastructure and the facility that we're suggesting here.
And I can see the applicant nodding. Is that something that the applicant is on board with and prepared to facilitate?
Yeah. So our special needs lead does meet with other special needs leads in the area. And yeah, I mean, we'd very happily have, I mean, we do get someone coming in at the moment, but to have a dedicated space where they could bring their children, and possibly in the future, I know the local authority has been asking head teachers for what we call resource units, which are dedicated spaces for special needs children. It might be something we might consider in the future, if we felt that would fit in with what we want to do. But we're really keen for other schools to come and use our spaces. We're very lucky to have, if this goes ahead, we'd be very lucky to have this sort of space available for children.
Thank you. One of my questions also relates to travel to and from the school. I noticed on page 29 that there's an outstanding planning enforcement case where the school hasn't submitted a travel plan that was required as part of a previous planning application. Has that been submitted since the papers were printed?
So that's almost ready to be submitted. I think the deadline was this Thursday, but yeah, but I mean, I'm sorry about that. I mean, we get so many emails, and it was I think submitted via email to the main info address, and it wasn't passed on to me. But I got it last week, so we'll make sure that it's put in on time by this Thursday.
And that travel plan relates to the planning application from 2014, is that right?
Yeah, but no one sort of reminded me that we hadn't done it, or if they did, I didn't receive the reminder. So yeah, I mean, I can only apologise, but we'll get it done. Yeah.
We'll look forward to receiving that. Thank you. Did any other committee members have questions, please? Councillor Khan.
A declaration that it's a school that's in my ward. I hope I'm still able to participate.
Yes, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, all right. So my first is a comment. So I welcome any extension of SEND provision in the borough. And the other one you've just asked about the travel plan. I just wanted to just quickly catch on the school hours. So I heard that the activities will be within school hours. I just wondered whether there were after school clubs and what the hours were being accommodated.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, the main work would be done during school hours, but we do have a breakfast club which starts at about 7:45, 8 o'clock for working parents and also for vulnerable children, not just working parents, but for parents who find it difficult for various reasons. And we do have a number of after-school clubs as well. They usually start at 3:30 after school and then go on till about 4:30. But we are looking into the possibility of having sort of more wraparound care. I mean, something that the government has raised recently in the budget, spring budget. So we are thinking of that, but I think that would be sort of to about 6 o'clock because that's when they finish. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be this bill wouldn't add to anything that we do currently or we would plan to do. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes, it does.
Thank you. I had a question which I was hoping that Toby Johnson, the chair of our design review panel, could answer. I read through the reports about the design review panel process and noted that earlier on there had been some concerns about lack of soft landscaping and also some concerns about the design. And I was hoping to get some reassurance about how comprehensively those concerns had been resolved, whether it was just like you felt like, oh, they've kind of come up to standard, or whether you felt that those kind of aspects had been really properly dealt with and we'd come out with something really high quality.
Regrettably, I haven't been involved in the review of this scheme, so I can't give you a response to that question. But I'm happy to take it back to whoever did chair that panel and provide clarity to the committee.
Perhaps the officer, Dan, are you able to provide any reassurance?
It's been assessed in-house, so it's not been through the design review panel process. But I'd say we've had at least 3 or 4 design meetings with design manager and their assistant over a period of sort of at least 6 months, I'd say. And Richard and the team have worked very closely and taken on board what we've suggested in order to get the highest quality design that we can, whilst also delivering a facility that's going to be fit for purpose. And we feel that it complements the existing buildings on the school site in material palette and also sort of siting. But the conditions that we've put in place relating to material palette, detailed architectural details and landscaping would ensure that what we're assessing today follows through in the construction process. So we're quite happy with the products that we've reached.
That's good to know. Thank you very much. Were there any further questions from committee members? Councillor Garfield and then Councillor Lee Parkway.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, a declaration, though I won't be voting on the item, I do have an interest as I'm cabinet member for education. Nonetheless, the questions I have pertain specifically to the travel plan comments queried previously by yourself, Chair, and Councillor Morris. I understand that the strategy is currently being written and will be submitted to the planning department in due course. I want to understand directly from the applicant what steps are currently in place to foster an environment where it is beneficial and more sustainably encouraged that staff, pupils and families travel to the school in a sustainable manner, utilising active travel, being able to walk, and what work's being done with the local authority highways team to provide those safe routes to the school. I understand that given the specific nature of the annex structure planned for this development, you wouldn't expect that everybody travelling to the site is able to make full use of the most common modes of active travel, but that doesn't mean that there aren't strategies that can be put in place to encourage sustainable modes of transport that is fully accessible to people with all levels of need. And I wondered if, to what extent that's been explored, and whether we could expect, frankly, quite an exciting travel plan in the near future and how that's being formed.
Would anyone from the application team like to talk to us about the work that you're doing on that?
So on sort of trying to encourage both staff and pupils to travel more sustainably. So I mean, I try to lead by example. So I do cycle to school, I'd say almost every day, unless it's really raining very, very hard. And we do work with the staff and the children, asking them, how they, as part of the travel plan process, how they travel to school currently, and then using the curriculum to teach them about far more sustainable ways of traveling. And we get the kids to do a lot of work on sustainability and environment in general anyway. So the two, in terms of the curriculum, so the two connect. So there is work in the curriculum that goes on with the teachers, making sure that they're clued up, they know what the different options are, walking, public transport, cycling, and encouraging the children to do so. I mean, the vast majority of the children live quite close, so they mostly walk. But yeah, it's trying to persuade the staff, I think. I mean, I'm encouraged by myself by the increasing number of cycle lanes that we have in the borough and in London. But if I'm honest, it's still an uphill struggle trying to get people out of their cars, as I'm sure it must be everywhere, and to walk or cycle, in public transport. But we'll continue to try to do our best on that.
May I ask a follow-up, Chair?
Please do.
Thank you for that answer. I'm terribly sorry, I don't know the name yet. But following the construction, obviously, should the development seek planning consent of the new facility, in these future proposals, will you be seeking to actively disincentivize unnecessary use of the car park? Because obviously, as a committee, what we're seeking to understand is, given that you've chosen to maintain that number of car parking spaces and not, for example, convert it to play space or to sustainable urban drainage, or even to provide an even bigger facility, we'd like to understand what the longer term plan for that site is, because this sustainable travel plan that we're putting together surely should make that car park redundant in the next 5 to 10 years. So are you planning to actively disincentivize staff from driving? Don't hold a blue badge.
Well, so yeah, I don't know how we would do that. We can certainly incentivize and try and persuade people to drop their polluting cars. But if people are able to point me in the right direction as to how we can we can incentivize, what's the right word, people by using their cars. I'd be happy to look at that. I mean, whether we'd be able to do it in 5 to 10 years, I don't know. I don't know if places are able to do that. It'd be great if we could. I mean, I know that electrical cars and so on are also on the agenda. I'd love it if people cycled or walked to school. I mean, I can't really give any more assurances than I have at the moment, I'm afraid, as to what we can do there, really.
Well, we do really appreciate that. And obviously we can see from your school's Ofsted record that you're a really ambitious school that is really pushing the limits of what a large primary school can achieve. And I suppose we could just leave this line of questioning with the message from the committee that we would really like to encourage you to be really ambitious in terms of environmental impact and how people travel as well. Were there any other, Carleen, I'm sorry. I could see you had your hand up earlier.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry for lateness. Just in regards to the building itself, I noticed that the report doesn't speak to the type of SEND needs that this specific building would accommodate. So I'm making an assumption that it may be of various needs. The building will be accommodating children 2 to 4. But I do want to understand, because I noticed that you have a mobility room? I think it's been referenced to. And so I'm assuming that's with equipment of some sort that would help with those children that have more complex needs.
Yeah.
And I just wondered in regards to these, it's an open-ended question, I guess. I just wondered in regards to the types of materials used within the building, would they facilitate the needs of the children in regards to their sensory needs?
Yeah.
That we all know that buildings, especially old buildings, don't always accommodate to the needs of children that have, for instance, sensory needs. Will this building be accommodating to those needs, especially of those children with quite complex needs and sensory and processing disorders?
Yeah. Can I answer that, shall I, Rachel?
Yes, please do.
So 2 parts of that question. So yes, I mean, you're right. It will cater to a whole host of different needs that children have, from autistic, and autistic children are very different, really, one from another. They display different needs. Children with Downs, we've got some of those as well. We often get children with medical needs who need feeding through a tube. That's why we've got a hygiene room there. In terms of the sense, so we'll have a mobility room, but in terms of the sensory, we're going to have a dedicated sensory room that's going to be kitted out, which will engage the children in different ways, using different senses. So it might be through sound, through light, through touch. So that's going to be a good sized room in order for them to be able to use that. In terms of the rest of the rest of the space there, because there'll be a dedicated or 2 dedicated teaching spaces with a removable partition and then some office space. And we've had a meeting with Richard to talk about, in those rooms, really, you want to reduce the stimulus. That's the idea, because particularly with some autistic children, they can't cope with overstimulation. So we're looking at how we can do that in terms of how we position switches and how we position kind of access to the computer when it's not in use, those sorts of things. So it's a combination of providing a really good sensory room, which will kit out, as well as then reducing the sensory stimulation in the rest of the building.
Did you have a supplementary question, Carleen?
I have another question, if that's okay.
Of course, go ahead.
Just for some feedback in regards to what you've just, actually, I'll do that first. So just in regards to what you've just said, and sorry, forgive me, I don't know your name.
Shahid, my name is Shahid.
Shahid, sorry.
Yeah.
So just in regards to what you said in regards to the sensory element, and I appreciate that and understand fully what it is that you're saying. However, I guess one of the things that I would push back is, what about those children that are sensory seeking and like lots of sensory input? Will that work the same within that building, or are we catering for one need and not the other?
No. So the sensory room would be for those children. So
Brilliant.
The sensory room would be full of sensory stimulus.
Brilliant.
For those children that can cope with that.
And the other question I had, looking at the planned floor plan on page 49, I note that there is a door going out to the car park, and I just wanted to make a inquiry. I'm assuming that door is going to that car park because this is a purpose-built building, and I'm assuming that children will be entering via maybe school bus for those that have children with certain needs. I heard you just say just a moment ago that there are some children that of more complex nature that may require to be put into school by vehicle. Is that the reason why there is a door going into the car park area from that?
Yes, so two reasons. I mean, the majority of the children will come in as they do at the moment through the main school gate with their parents, and they're usually then teaching assistants who then pick them up and then take them into school. But the purpose of having the door on the other side are for two reasons. So if there is a child who needs to come by, for example, as you say, by a minibus or something, they can then come directly in. But also any staff, if they park in the car park, or if they're cycling in, whatever, they can then come straight in. It'll be fobbed, so they'll be able to access the building without then having to go around. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to propose that we draw this part of the agenda to a close and move to the vote. Dan, could I please ask you to share your screen again so that the recommendation from officers to members is shown?
I can indeed, Chair.
And just as a reminder that there will be 4 of us voting on this. Thank you. So we are asked as a committee to resolve to agree the reasons for approval and to delegate authority in the usual way. Can I please see the hands for those in favour? Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you very much to those who've attended for this item. As ever, you are very welcome to join us for the rest of the committee meeting, which I'm sure you'd find fascinating. But if you need to get offline and get to your families, then we will understand that.
Lovely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we move to item 7 on the agenda, which is the land at Leys Road and Royal Road in West Beckton. Can I ask the applicants, please, first, if you would like to have up to 5 minutes to present your application before we move to the officer?
Yes, we would, Chair.
Well, in which case, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Mazar Ali, and I'm a Senior Development Manager in the Council's Housing Delivery Team. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about our planning application for the land at Leys Road this evening. I would like to thank our planning officer for her comprehensive report and the valuable advice we have received throughout the planning process from other colleagues within the planning team and the DRP members. As you may be aware, the Council has an ambitious programme of affordable housing delivery. Since it started in 2018, 233 truly affordable homes have been completed for Newham residents, with a further 779 homes under contract and progressing on site. The in-house delivery team are currently working across a number of sites to deliver circa 700 homes truly affordable. The first 200 of these will be completed and handed over to the Newham residents during the remainder of this calendar year. We are already working on plans to deliver even more new homes to meet the corporate plan's target for 2026. To achieve this, we are exploring opportunities for development of land within the Council's control, working in partnership with other organisations to optimise development potential. For Leys Road, we have worked closely with the Department for Education to facilitate the delivery of a much needed special education needs SEN school on 2/3 of the site to be operated by the Learning in Harmony Trust for children from the ages of 5 to 19 with complex autistic spectrum disorder. At present, we understand that over 100 Newham children with autism have to leave the borough to access appropriate provision. Forecasts show that demand will increase over the coming years and further exacerbate the problem. A new SEN school on the site will help meet existing and future demand for specialist provision for children with complex needs that cannot be met elsewhere in the borough. This is strongly supported by the Council's education team, who are here today to answer any queries that members may have on the school. The remaining third of the site has been identified as surplus to education requirements, and in compliance with planning policy, we are looking to to provide up to 116 affordable rented housing with £11.6 million of investment in the form of grant from the GLA. The homes exceed policy by providing over 40% as family homes, and both residential and school are targeting high standards of energy efficiency and sustainability. The school is targeting BREEAM Excellent. The residential scheme has been designed to passive house standards and is achieving an 89% reduction in carbon, which is significantly above the policy aspirations for a 50% reduction in the current London plan. The measures combined will provide future residents with low running costs, which is something we aim for on all our schemes in the face of the ongoing energy crisis and fuel poverty. Both the residential scheme and the school have been through an extensive, valuable pre-application process with the council's planning and design teams. This has included multiple meetings with the design review panel, secured by design officer, as well as community engagement through a webinar and public exhibition. The design has evolved positively in response to the feedback received, and we will provide high quality accommodation to complement the local area. We would welcome any questions from the committee, and we are able to support this application with significant social and environmental benefits to the surrounding area and Newham residents as a whole. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask Rajvinder Kaur to give us the officer's report on this application?
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen now.
Can
I ask that you can see this?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. So item 7, land at Leys Road and Royal Road, E16 3HE. The site is located within Custom House in the south of the borough. The aerial photo shows the site, which is situated between Royal Road to the north, Leys Road and Calverton Primary School to the east, public pedestrian footpath and Royal Docks Academy Secondary School to the west, and the allotments to the south. This application is a hybrid planning permission with the detailed component comprising the erection of 2 buildings of 4 to 8 stories in height with 116 residential units and associated landscaping, cycle parking, secure communal amenity space and other associated works. The outline component comprises provision of a new SEND school with all matters reserved with the exception of access. A committee update has been provided for members, which contains updates to some of the attached conditions and heads of terms, including a response from Historic England. This slide provides a bit more detail on the 2 components of the application, which are also within the committee report. Focusing on the outline component, it will provide the special educational needs school with the parameter plan setting out the zones for the building and the maximum heights and the car parking area. Plans are included within the committee report at Appendix 3. And the detail component comprises the 2 residential buildings, 4 to 8 stories in height, and 232 cycle parking spaces. A maximum of 246 on site, but 232 provided. I'll elaborate further on the transportation slide. Key considerations relate to the principle of development, affordable and family housing, design, transport and travel, and impact upon amenity. Site is allocated as a community facility and green space in principle supporting the provision of education. In terms of the residential provision, the local plan policy INF 8 strategically supports the co-location of compatible uses with community facilities. Officers consider that the residential component would accord with this, making efficient use of surplus land not required by the school. In terms of the reduction in green space, the existing space is currently inaccessible to the public and unmanaged. Officers have taken into consideration the need for affordable homes and the need for a dedicated SEND school within the London Borough of Newham. The proposals will provide a reduced but functional area of green amenity space and enhance the western public footpath. The school would retain a significant portion of soft landscaping for use by the students of the school. The loss of the green space is justified on balance, given the site allocation for community facility education, the need for both affordable homes and the proposed dedicated special educational needs school, as well as the improvements to the footpath and the inclusion of sports and community access. In conclusion, the proposed development is supported in principle. In terms of affordable and family housing, the proposal would deliver a 100% affordable housing scheme and a policy compliant provision of family sized units. Officers consider this to provide an important contribution towards the provision of new housing within the borough. In terms of design, the detailed proposal provides active frontages to Royal Road and the Western pedestrian public footpath, which opens up the width of the route through the introduction of residential front doors and habitable room windows facing it. Further improvements to the Western footpath are to be made through lighting, CCTV and resurfacing. Landscaping is provided within the communal courtyard, and extensive soft landscaped outdoor space is provided to the school. In terms of the parameter plans for the school, this slide shows the parameter plans, which is in outline at this stage. The school building is set back from the road frontage. A secure drop-off and pick-up location is provided on the western portion of the site. The green area indicates the minimum outdoor space in the upper image. The beige in the upper plan also sets out the school footprint location and also the proposed multi-use games area, which is that smaller sort of rectangle. The lower image is the location of the taller element of the building with a maximum height of 11 meters from ground floor. The outline component is currently in pre-application and will come forward in detail as reserved matters. The scale and massing of the detailed proposals and the parameter plans are considered to be appropriate and make efficient use of the land. LBN strategic design are supportive and confirm the proposals have evolved positively through the design review panel process. Overall, and subject to the compliance with the recommended conditions and heads of terms, officers are of the view that the proposed development will be of a high quality addition to the area in accords with the design policies. The proposals are in terms of design are supported. In terms of transport and travel, the site has a P-Tower 3 on the western portion to 1B to the eastern portion and benefits from good links to Prince Regent DLR station and the bus station. The detailed development is proposed as car-free with agreement with London Borough Highways that on-street residential parking spaces can be converted to blue badge spaces when required. In terms of cycles, a total of 232 spaces with 4 short stay and 228 long stay cycle spaces are provided in line with London Plan requirements. There is capacity for a further 14 spaces to be provided within front gardens of the duplexes if requested by residents, bringing the total to 246 that could be provided on site for the residential, with the minimum being the 232. The outline component proposes a secure drop-off and pick-up on site and includes 13 parking spaces made up of 8 standard spaces, 3 blue badge and 2 minibus spaces. As noted within the report, LBN Transport do not support the provision of any standard car parking spaces. Officers engaged in discussions with the applicant on this matter, and the figure was revised from initially 52 spaces down to 8 standard spaces, which the applicant state are for operational purposes only and not for staff commuting to the site. LBN Education and colleagues also supported the need for operational parking for health staff carrying equipment. Officers have weighed the views provided for operational parking needs and by LBN Transport, and in this instance, on balance, agree the maximum of 8 standard car parking spaces for the proposals. Overall, excluding the standard parking spaces for the school, LBN Transportation Highways are supportive of the rest of the proposals, subject to conditions on cycle parking details, delivery and servicing strategy, travel plan, car park management, construction logistics and heads of terms for restriction on business parking permits, car club membership, travel plan monitoring, operational parking and section 278 agreement. The proposals in terms of transport and travel are therefore supported. In terms of impact to neighbouring amenity, of the 798 neighbours consulted, 1 objection was received, which has been considered within the officer report. The proposal subject to conditions would not present any significantly adverse impacts to neighbouring sites in terms of noise disturbance, overlooking, loss of privacy, light and sunlight. Further, in the consideration of amenity, when there are some impacts, officers have given weight to the proposal's contribution towards the provision of affordable homes, public realm, and the provision of the dedicated SEND school. From the recommendation, the Strategic Development Committee is asked to note the committee update and resolve to agree the reasons for approval as set out in this report, and delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a unilateral undertaking under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, based on the heads of terms identified at Appendix 2 of this report and the conditions listed in Appendix 1 of the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just wait if you could stop sharing your screen, then that brings us back to the gallery view. Thank you. Great, so we move on to questions or comments for this application. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. So can I refer you to page 117, paragraphs 220 and 221? Which piqued my curiosity. Can I ask about what was the conversations about what was the tone of conversations between LBN Transport and LPN Education, and give us a little details about what issues remained unresolved. And on my second question, on page 118, paragraphs 231 and 203, I was wondering, can you provide me more details about the school travel plan? My concern is the Boyle Road currently is essentially a dead end, and is currently has no traffic because no one needs to run through it for a destination. And my worry is that without any measures to prevent unnecessary drop-offs, we will turn an ordinarily quiet residential road into quite a hectic scene in the mornings and in the afternoons. And I just wanted to know what measures were in there to prevent unnecessary travel by cars, drop-off and pickups. I do have one third question, but would it be cheeky for me to?
Shall we deal with those questions first? I'm not sure whether those would be better dealt with by the officer about the discussions between education and transport, or by education colleagues who are here in the room with us.
I'm happy to sort of just give an introduction, and then maybe education colleagues can also pick up on the points around the car parking issue.
That sounds helpful. Thank you.
So LBN Transportation, the main issue was with the standard car parking spaces, and that they would be used effectively by staff, and what the definition was of the standard car parking spaces. So the school has and the applicant have sort of stressed the need that they are for operational parking, and therefore health visitors who carry equipment from between this school, proposed site, and then potentially other hubs within the borough itself. We obviously in the borough, our policy is towards car-free development and not having any standard car parking spaces, and ensuring that, given that this is a PTEL 3 location, and we have good links to transportation, that members of staff should be utilising sustainable modes of transport to travel to this site and also to other sites as well. So we sort of hit a moot point. I'm sure education can provide sort of further details on what they consider operational parking and what the actual need is for these 8 standard parking spaces.
Thank you. And perhaps colleagues from education could pick up some of the concerns that John raised about the introduction of sort of school run traffic to this road as well.
Sure. So my name is Peter Gibb. I'm Head of Education Access and Infrastructure, and I report to Vic Verma, who's the Director of Education. So in discussions with planning colleagues and in discussion with DFE and the Learning in Harmony Trust, we carefully considered the imperative to absolutely minimise the number of parking spaces, and a clear understanding that all commuting journeys to this school should not be by car, and there should be no parking spaces for that purpose, and that's clearly understood. We also understand that this particular school, as a highly specialist school, will have quite considerable numbers of visiting specialists throughout the day. Those specialists will not be based exclusively this school. They may be visiting other specialist provisions in other parts of the borough, and neither will they be exclusively employed by the Learning in Harmony Trusts. Some will be borough therapists or therapists employed by the NHS, who will be transporting quite highly specialist equipment between different settings, possibly throughout the day. And so we were quite clearly persuaded that for that very particular cohort of travelling between settings, that to make the best use of their time in supporting these children, which often very complex, there is the case has been made for this small number of operational spaces to allow efficient use of time of these highly specialist individuals. And I think to answer the kind of related point, obviously, what we're talking about a relatively small number of individuals travelling between the different settings, hence the number of proposed operational parking spaces. Ashley's here from the Learning in Harmony Trust. I don't know if Ashley might be invited to add.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I'm Ashley Easton. I'm one of the executive leaders at the Learning in Harmony Trust. We've got 10 schools in 3 boroughs, 5 in Newham. one of which is JFK Special School, which again has just received outstanding report, one of a handful of special schools nationally to get outstanding under the new framework. So I think one thing just to note about the student population at the school is that the overwhelming majority will travel by specialist transport because of the complexity of needs. So we don't see parents generally at the school gates. That's not the way that it works. So within the area where the 8 spaces are, there's a really significant drop-off zone and turning circle, so that for the safety of the students, we'll have to get all the transportation in and then close it. And then once the students are inside, we'll take that out. So that will alleviate some of the congestion on Royal Road itself. I think just another point about a really significant difference between a special school and a mainstream setting. Actually, at JFK Special School, the majority of the staff do travel in already by public transport, and part of another project that we've got, actually, we reduced the number of car parking spaces at one of the JFK sites to accommodate additional pupil spaces. The teachers themselves tend not to be taking lots of books and things home to mark, because most of the students won't be accessing the curriculum in the same way. But there are a very small number of staff that will need to move from site to site. And as Peter said, we'll have quite specialist equipment, and it would really inhibit their effectiveness if they weren't able to do that really efficiently.
That's really useful. Thank you.
I do have a
Supplementary question, John.
I do, Chair. So on the slide it mentioned 8 standard parking spaces, and if I remember correctly, 8 operational spaces.
They're the same. It's just 8.
Okay, just 8 parking.
Yeah, and then it's the blue badge, and then it's the minibus spaces.
And what assurances we have that those standard spaces, parking spaces, will only be for those specialist staff, not for employees for there to park from?
Well, I mean, we already operate things like the cycle to work scheme and things, and we provide incentives through our employment scheme to encourage people to cycle. We're very close to a DLR stop there. I think we will need to make sure that we manage it effectively and make it clear who those spaces are for. And there's no way that we'd be allowing staff to block spaces for therapists that are required to move from site to site.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is that both of your questions, John? Did you say you had another one?
Yes, but I was thankfully it was answered.
Oh, okay, great.
Chair, Chair,
yes,
if I may, could I also help Councillor Morris regarding that very last question? On page 151, there are the heads of terms, and point 13 for the heads of terms is to ensure that those are for operational parking only. So it will be part of the legal requirements for that.
That was going to be one of my questions. Thank you very much for that, James. That's really helpful. I do have some questions as well, but do I see any further questions from the chamber? Councillor Lee Parkway.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a few questions, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
I may think, I don't know if I should declare an interest here, but I am also a parent of a highly complex ASD child who accesses provision from a local authority. But I don't think it changes my ability to question this application.
No, in fact, if anything, we're very glad to have you here.
So I guess, I appreciate the comments that were made in regards to car parking. As a parent of a child that has highly complex needs and goes to a specialist provision, I understand the need for space in order to commute those children in and out. I do understand the reason for questioning. Also, I do understand the provision for spaces for specialist staff that even may be teaching staff that move throughout the trust. However, one of the things that I didn't see in this document, and just thinking about the nature of the school, thinking about the children that will be accessing the school, understanding and knowing about your other schools. I guess what I didn't see in this document, which I maybe would like to just raise here, is the proximity to the airport and the level of noise that will be permeated from that space, and how that will affect those children that have quite complex needs. and sound, sensory input, and the rest of it could then really affect their day. And I appreciate that this is a outlined application, and maybe it comes later, but I would like to see something in regards to what that would look like in regards to the materials that you're using and so on and so forth, and how you're going to buffer that sound, because that can then detrimentally affect those children in their learning. And I appreciate what you said. Those children we're discussing are not necessarily going to be accessing a curriculum that would be for a neurotypical child. So I just want to understand that and how that works. And just, I guess, a question I want to ask, and I don't know who I'm asking this to, so whoever wants to answer, be great. How will the school be embedded into the new community that's being formed and not an add-on to that community? I've seen many schools go up in our borough and they're great, but once the community come in, they become a hindrance. And it shouldn't be like that. These are educational facilities for the next generation. So I want to understand, because of the complexity of the school and the types of children we know will be in this school, how will that school embed in the space in which it occupies amongst new neighbours and also old neighbours? Really welcome, Chair, the conversations in regards to what the officers spoke about in regards to CCTV and lighting. I would just ask that that's not lost anywhere in the scheme, especially for those vulnerable children that will be in that school space. And I will know that the school will have its own security, but it's really important. And also one more thing, Chair, while I've got the floor.
Of course.
Really welcome the 4-bed properties were on the site, which is much needed. These properties will really make a big difference to those families that we have sitting on our waiting list and have been for many, many years. So I really welcome that. I have more questions, but I'm not going to take up too much time. But if you could answer some of those, that'd be great.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. And I'm sure all the committee members will echo your words about the importance of family homes and 4-bed homes, which are really genuinely going to change the lives of every single family that moves into them. So it's always so positive to see London affordable rent, but particularly those larger properties. Do you perhaps want to start from an education perspective, thinking about the suitability of the site regarding the proximity to the airport and the noise and the impact on autistic children?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of key things just to consider there. The first one is that part of the DFE's feasibility was to look at this in terms of noise. So there were feasibility surveys undertaken, and a really central consideration in terms of the design of the building and the low sensory environment has been around all the materials right from scratch. And I'd gladly talk you through everything that we've done, but we spent a lot of time making sure that that's been really well considered.
Chair, could I just add to the noise aspect? We do have a condition recommended for the school on noise, and those details are in outline at the moment, but they are going through pre-application, so we expect those to come forward when the preserved matters application does come forward, and then those are secured already on this permission via a condition as well.
Thank you. So hopefully the details of how that's managed is something we can come back to when more details of that part of the application come in. I wonder who would be the best person to speak to this idea about the relationship between the school and the new community that are moving in next to it. And would that be perhaps somebody from LBN or again, our colleagues from education?
So this process has been part of a free school bid with the DFE, and one of the conditions that Newham had around the bid was the provision of Centre of Excellence, which really sets out to benefit the local community. A special school already does work within the community. Pre-COVID, the facilities were used really quite significantly by a number of organisations. It was used for respite. It was used as much as possible in the holidays. We're already planning exactly how we would do that, but we're really ambitious for how we embed this school at the heart, particularly for those vulnerable families in the community and people with SEN outside of the normal school day.
Perhaps we could also encourage you to liaise with the Custom House councillors. You may well be in touch with them already. about making links between the school and both the existing community and also the new community. Did you have a supplementary question on this issue? Okay, and the next point that you raised was one about the importance of the CCTV and security in terms of designing out crime and reducing the potential for ASB. I don't know whether anybody from the LBN housing or development team wants to just reassure us on that point to make sure that these things won't be lost. We're all, we know some of the issues that Newham has, and we know some of the issues we currently have, which have been kind of designed in. So where we can from the beginning, we're keen to design them out.
Chair, yes, so I'll have an attempt to answer the question if it's a good question. We've been working very closely with Claire Halifax, who's the local Secure by Design officer with the Met Police, and we've established a very, very strong relationship with her. And coincidentally, we had a conversation with her a couple of weeks ago about some of the questions that have come up today about CCTV, the path, lighting, and we've addressed that through the drawings we've done and the reports we've done. It's important to us. To quite a lot of units in a small space. So design, the quality of the design and the quality of the environment is the most important thing, particularly designing out, those things that you just spoke about. We've taken on board virtually every recommendation that the Secure by Design has made in terms of climbing, brickwork, landscaping, and we have on the line, if you want further evidence from us in terms of the way that we thought about design, I have Chris Gilbert from Colour, who are our landscape architects, who have been responsible for dealing with all the issues that you've just mentioned. So if there's a supplementary comment that we can make, we will do that.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions which are related to the landscape, so perhaps it might be helpful to see if Chris wanted to come in. I wondered if you could help me understand a bit on, or this might be a question for Rajvinder, apologies. On page 112, it talks about the amount of play space provided within the development for the children and families growing up there. Yep. On paragraph 189, it says using the benchmark of 10 square metres play space per child, total requirement is therefore 1,568.4 square metres. Then in paragraph 190, it talks about providing 672 square metres. And then in the same paragraph, it then talks about a 627 square metre requirement when applying the 10 square metres per child calculations. So there are two different calculations there, as well as the proposed provision of 672. And it then says that I think it says that it exceeds the provision, which obviously, given these numbers, it doesn't. Can you help me understand it?
My understanding is that it's actually the 627 square metre provision is what we've been working to, and that's what we've exceeded. I'm not quite sure where the other figures have come from, frankly, but we have 655 square metres of doorstep play within the development itself. They are contained within the courtyard and provide play really for younger children. That's specifically for from birth to 4, but also spill over into older age groups, really, up to about the age of 11. The play itself is composed of a combination of naturalistic kind of play on the way type interventions. That includes informal logs and balance beams and play mounds and so forth, but also includes an equipped formal play area in the southern reaches of the site, all of which has been designed to be fully inclusive to both children and those caring for those children.
Thank you. Rajvinder, are you able to enlighten me as to where the 1,568 square metres requirement in the previous paragraph has come from?
So that's a total play space for all age groups. So the lower number is what they're providing on site. So apologies, there was a little mix up with the 7.2 and the 2.7 with right and get out. Apologies for that element, but yeah. So they're providing a certain set provision on site for the youngest children, but acknowledges that there is parks nearby for older children.
That's helpful. Thank you. Was this a question about play space? In which case, I wonder, I will come back to you. I won't forget you. I wonder, thinking about the landscaping and about the outside space, I noticed a concern that was raised, or at least an issue that was being developed with the design review panel about the courtyard and about the landscaping in the courtyard, and about to what extent this was a place where people would really want to linger and use the space. I did make a note, but I can't find it. Oh yes, there was a concern that the courtyard might be a bit underwhelming, was the word that leapt out at me. Toby, I'm hoping that you were in fact involved in this application. Could I maybe bring you in to describe to us whether the concerns raised by DRP, including the courtyard and the landscaping around the relationship between the homes and the school, do you feel like they've been resolved satisfactorily?
I think sort of generally the applicant has been very responsive to our comments, and certainly the sort of transformation between the first scheme and the second scheme was introduced sort of a lot of benefits, more open space, better daylighting to that space. So I think any comments we had were more of a detailed nature, possibly about, you know, the balance between hard and soft landscaping, and the sort of details of planting. So I think we felt confident that, you know, all the big moves were right, and that any residual concerns could be picked up through detailed conditions.
That's very reassuring. Thank you. I was trying to learn today what exactly a brise soleil is, which was a nice learning opportunity for me there. As I understand it, a kind of slatted sort of thing to shield some of the rays of the sun. But yeah. Josh, you indicated earlier you had a question.
I did, thank you. And I did in the end think of a question that was relating to a place-based one. So I'll start with that. But at first I should share the same interest I declared for the previous item, which is that as cabinet member, I do have an interest on which interferes with my ability to make a decision objectively in the committee. Richard Hart Hospice is right next to the site, and they have an excellent SEND inclusive play facility. And I wondered, just based on listening to the answers to that question, whether any conversations have begun with them about how that might be developed. I see you nodding, Ashley.
Yeah, not yet, not from our perspective, but that's something we could.
Were you thinking about the relationship between the hospice and the housing provision, or the relationship between the hospice and the proposed special school, or both?
Both, because you would imagine that in line with our commitment as a borough to accessible play spaces in new developments, place-based development residents would also be SEND inclusive. And then of course you're on top of the SEND school and you're meters away from a children's hospital, which also has a SEND playground. I wondered what collaborative work you have begun, if any, just because the nature of your line of questioning piqued my interest.
Carleen, I could see you indicating to speak.
Yeah, sorry. So I understand the question. I guess I would be really interested in the answer, only because I appreciate the comments that Councillor Garfield is making. That is a specialist provision over at the Richard House Hospice, which is end-of-life care for many young people, and the appropriateness of having a housing estate accessing
That's not what
that space.
That's not what I was suggesting. I meant sharing best practice, not act.
It's a garden space, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a fence.
That's it. But never mind, that covers that. I have other questions.
Please do go ahead.
Thank you. Firstly, with regards to the comments made about contacting the local councillors and engaging with the community, I wondered what level of community engagement plan is already in place, because of course this is an outline planning application, so hopefully we'll be kick-starting a period of physical events and online consultation and in-person consultation, and I wonder what the timeline for that was with the Clapham House community.
So from a free school perspective, we have to engage in a Section 10 consultation process, which we've already undertaken, because in order to get sign-off from the DFE to open the school, we have to submit a consultation report to them. So we held in November and December 3 virtual consultations, attended by 0, 3 and 9 people. We were then requested to run a face-to-face consultation, which we publicised again, and there was one person responded wanting to attend. So we asked them if we wanted to arrange a one-to-one meeting separate to that, and that was declined. We got 16 responses. The report isn't public yet because it's got to get DFE sign off, but it is a comprehensive report, and we received 16 responses, the majority of which were very positive, and we responded in full to any questions that were raised. I think what we need to do once we've got to the point of exchange of the land and the signing of the agreement with the DFE is to consider the next steps around consultation with the local community, particularly in line with the residential application. But that's the work that we've done so far.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Is it possible that the events that were relatively underattended perhaps weren't advertised in the best of the crossability? Or do you think that there's a part that we played by the local authority to ensure that they're widespread?
I can tell you what we did in terms of who we sent it to, and we physically delivered leaflets to the local area. We contacted over 120 school doctor surgeries. I've got a really comprehensive list, so we're confident it went a long way. I think the nature of consultations like this sometimes is that it's only if there's a really significant amount of resistance to it that you get high levels of attendance. So, and I know I would say this, but that to us was a positive sign.
Okay.
Most of the attendees were parents, young people with special needs in Newham who were interested to find out more about the school.
That is interesting. Might there be anything that I'll do to help with the next stage of engagement, just to help? Because obviously it sounds like the trust is very keen for it to reach many, many people, but that hasn't yet been the case. I mean, the officers can help in that regard.
If I can come in, yeah, I think we have a range of methods of communicating with parents and people. So we have our inclusion newsletter, we have our parent carer forum. So I think that as we move closer to the opening of the school, that we can, as we have already, continue to promote the fact that this school is coming and that we value engagement in the process of opening.
And also, Peter, with the local community and custom house, beyond just the people who are likely to be service users, but also the local residents who be living near the school. Is there also a plan for that from your side of things?
I think we would need to look at how we would do that, yeah, and perhaps we can engage ward councillors to help us do that.
And also the staff from the local library as well, who will be running lots of different community events. And I'm sure we'll be able to link you up with local newsletters and other things that are going on.
Chair, very sorry. Sorry, Chair, very sorry to interrupt, but I don't know if I could assist with that at all. I'm Matthew Blythe, so I'm the planning lead for the school scheme specifically. So following on with the reserve matters that will follow on from today's this hybrid application. So just to reassure members that obviously off the back of tonight and hopefully a successful decision, we'll be starting to sort of undertake our stage of engagement with members, with local residents as well, in terms of obviously alongside what Ashley is doing with the trust from an education perspective, actually consulting on the emerging design and taking forward that stage of consultation as well. So yeah, we're very pleased to start that hopefully off the back of, say, this evening, and we'll be in touch very shortly with members on that too.
As I thought the outline would kickstart that, so thank you, Matthew.
That's helpful, thank you. Carleen, did you want to come in on this issue of community engagement, or did you have another question? No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, thank you. I had a question, and I thought I'd missed it, but I haven't. I just can't see it. And I had a question. So I know that the development, not you guys. I know that it's really difficult this document because it's got both parts of it and it gets a bit confused. But anyway, so I noticed that the residential development is a car-free site development. Sorry, I'm trying to think of my words. So it's a car-free development. However, I don't see in this document the provision of blue badge parking. But I do note that 10% of the properties will be wheelchair accessible. So unless they've got motorised wheelchairs.
I think those were being provided on street, but maybe the officer can explain.
That's a question. So I want to ask, because the way this is written, it sounds to me that the parking will be on street because there's an ability for it to be on street. And that doesn't sound to me that it takes away from people buying properties or renting in that space and not still having a car outside of the car zone hours. And I just wanted to understand that, because it just made it sound like there is provision in that on that road, so therefore cars can park there. It sounded like there was something else. It just sounded like, well, actually, it's a car-free development, but it's not really, because there is actually parking over here, which you can get. You're not going to get a permit, but reality knows as a planning.
Yeah, perhaps officers could help us there. My understanding was that there would be dedicated blue badge residential spaces allocated to individual people with blue badges on the road. But can you help clarify?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So if need arises, those blue badge spaces, the standard spaces on the road can be converted into blue badge spaces. So as the need arises, they will be converted on street. The sort of description about the on street, just the wider area, that there is a long frontage there where there is parking on street. I believe it's pay and display parking on street. But we're also, as part of highways and transport sort of consideration, and given that the school is going to be in this location as well, and large number of residential units, we are also going to be looking at and undertaking a review of the Custom House RPZ as well to see whether or not those hours need to be extended to just stop people from parking on street. But it wouldn't be for other residents to just park on street. But if the existing bays already exist there, we wouldn't be encouraging it, but we can't remove all of the bays to sort of stop all the parking, but we can review the RPZ and restrict the occupiers of the units from purchasing any parking permits other than blue badge holders.
Does that cover your question, Colleen?
It does to a certain extent. I guess what I want to understand, and maybe it's just me. So if we're saying that the parking, there is availability on street parking, and I'm assuming that, and my eyes are not that good, but I'm assuming what those words say on Royal Road, and there's another road that runs alongside where there's, on the diagrams, there's some trees being planted, and there's, I don't know what that is. I think that's a footpath I can see. Where would these spaces be in relation to the wheelchair accessible properties? Anyone that's seen me in this meeting before, I will ask the same question constantly, because I always want to understand the journey from the wheelchair user from parking their vehicle to their property. So where are those properties going to be situated? Surely, I'm assuming you would know that. Well, not you necessarily, but the applicant.
That we would. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So sorry, Rajavinda. I was just going to introduce Paul, who's from Yes Engineering, our transport consultant. We have him on the call just for this specific question. Paul, would you like to sort of assist councillors?
Yeah. I mean, I think it possibly has been covered here, but ultimately, blue badge parking would only be provided on street as and when someone makes a request for a blue badge space. And currently, it's obviously got quite a long frontage, so as and when anyone came forward, one of those bays along the front of the site would be converted as and when necessary. As already touched on. Sorry.
And what would the distance then be between that allocated blue badge space and the wheelchair accessible home?
Obviously, it depends where it is in the unit, but the furthest unit back is. Yeah.
Just to jump in there, the M43 units, so the wheelchair accessible units, are on the frontage, so they're right on the front with Royal Road, so they're the shortest possible distance to the highway for those spaces.
That's really helpful, thank you.
Could I just also add as well that there is restrictions around there, so that will prevent other users from indiscriminately using the site, and extensive parking surveys have been undertaken to assess the current stress on the parking on the roads, which shows that any of these spaces can be converted without harming other people that may use them already.
I suppose just to round off this question about parking spaces, I'd just like to add myself from some experience with casework that we would really appreciate if LBN officers could make sure that families and individuals and households who are moved in are told really clearly and carefully before they move in that it is a car-free development, unless of course they have a blue badge and can apply. Joshua.
Thank you. I had a question. I think this will primarily be sort of in the transport area we've got everyone. But I understand that as Councillor Department points out, the development is car free and the PTAL rating, it's escaped me, but I did read it in the paper, PTAL 3. We would imagine that the majority of residents would be seeking to access the Royal Albert DLR, which we're all familiar with as people who commute to Dockside frequently. Something else I'm familiar with as a Dockside commuter is Jake Russell Walk, which you have to use if you are a pedestrian trying to get from the site to that DLR, or if you are a cyclist trying to get from the site to further to get to Woolwich across the river. I wanted to understand what plans were afoot for Jake Russell Walk, because if we're imagining a vast increase of population at the site, all of whom we want to be utilising the bus routes, pedestrian routes, and the DLR by Jake Russell Walk, that needs significant improvement to be appropriate for that number of people and communities. Are there plans yet for that?
Thank you, Chair. I think the applicant could sort of expand on the plans, but the development does turn its face towards that. So for the length of their frontage, they are widening it. So at the moment, it's quite a narrow sort of frontage, and I know there is some CCTV, but as part of the works, they will be looking to resurface and review the CCTV and the management of Jake Russell Walk. We have questioned sort of through the process whether or not further to the south where the allotments are, whether that whole stretch could be widened, but that's a sort of a much more longer term discussion to be had with the allotment holders and a bit more complex. But certainly with the frontage that they have, that they've widened it as much as they can and opened it out so that there's much more passive surveillance and doorsteps effectively that front onto the Jake Russell Walk to make it more of a welcoming sort of route to the bus station.
It would also need to be appropriately demarcated between cyclists and pedestrians, which isn't currently the case because the low footfall. With this development, that would increase. It would have to be entirely redesigned in order for the development to be appropriately served by local transport routes. I have further questions, Chair. I don't know if you want to go around or come back. Or...
Go on. While you're talking, why not?
Thank you, Chair. Secondly, with regards to cycle routes out of the site heading north and west, obviously, it is divided from the rest of the world by Newham Way, which we know, and perhaps love, perhaps loathe, who cares? And Prince Regent Lane would be your primary escape from that corner of the world as a cyclist. Now, 240 cycle parking spaces, I think, are being installed. Excellent, and I have no qualm with the number. I think that is sufficient and welcome for the development to encourage cycling, but we need to we need to build safe cycling infrastructure from this particular development, west and north, that is currently a lot better than what we have at Prince Regent Lane and at the route, I forget the name of the road, but which would take one, I guess it's North Woolwich Road, isn't it, or Dockside Road, whatever it is, Victoria Dock Road, that's it, out to the Lower Lee Crossing. So what plans are afoot for that? Because I haven't actually seen any, unlike other development applications that we've looked at in North Woolwich and Silvertown. Yeah. You know what plans there are for those roads. I haven't seen any for this part of Newham. And yet this development is very welcomingly super sustainable with regards to cycle parking places.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and answer this without having a transport officer available. I know this development doesn't provide sort of wider improvements to those routes, but there is a cycle strategy that Newham has that strategically is looking at all of the routes across the borough as a whole. I know the pandemic delayed that, and there was a timetable as part of that. There are discussions that are being had with highways and sustainable transport officers, but that might be something that we would have to come back and revisit at a later time, maybe offline, that we can sort of speak to highways and then speak to members about the strategic approach to that. But it's something that's been looked at by highways strategically. But I know there was a delay with that strategy.
I'd like to propose a couple of things. One is that as an action, please, Clerk, that as a committee we take our concerns about the kind of wider cycle connectivity from this site back to officers in highways. I do also feel like there's a separate action, which is that Josh raises consistently and very correctly kind of out whenever we have these kind of developments, he raises the question of what then happens outside the red line. You know, within the red line, we can question all the things that we can. Outside, what then happens to connect these people up to the places that they need to go? And I wonder, again, whether we could perhaps make that an action for the committee, that at one of our development control members forums, perhaps we could ask someone from highways to come along and talk to us about the relationship between proposed new developments, particularly car-free developments where people are perforce travelling sustainably, and how that then feeds into the priority that we give for the various different routes and the planning and the kind of strategic vision, if you like. Does that help to address your concern?
That's very, very welcome, Chair. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Final question.
Right, it's final for now.
Final for now.
Given the site borders the allotment, which itself borders Victoria Dock Road, and then another big road all out of the way, heavy vehicle traffic, heavy pollution. We're proposing the outline plan mission for the school and new residences. Is there anything, because I haven't read it and I may have missed it, that recommends the installation of air quality monitors? Because we're encouraging a population of children to be educated here, but we are in close proximity to very busy roads and the airport, and we should be monitoring the quality of the air so that if it's insufficiently clean, we can encourage outside the red line people to do more about it.
Is that something that you would pursue via education? I know that we have installed air quality monitors outside all of our schools previously.
We have done, yes. So I think it would make logical sense that new schools also have an air monitor, and that we take that to our colleagues in the council.
Perhaps that's something we could ask you to take away and chase up and perhaps reassure us subsequently that that's being done.
Yes, please.
Thank you. John?
I am quite, and this ties in with Councillor Garfield's comment about cycle connectivity. So there is a Beckton master plan that has been proposed to the east of the site. We've seen some improvements made to Mitchell Walk that will improve pedestrianised walking and cycling to this site as well as the Beckton town centre. I just wanted to know, and this can either be a question for the officers or for the applicants. How will this development tie in with the master plan? Will the steel infrastructure money, the section 106, be used to help support the delivery of the master plan?
Thank you, Chair. I think I would expect so that if the development, as it progresses, if they draw down the funding, that it would, the still money that's collected as part of this would also fund that development as well. So it will be funded by all developments in the area.
And will that include the Beckton Way and specifically connections from Beckton Town Centre to Cycleway 3?
I would assume so, but we could check this with our SEAL team just to be assured, really. Yeah.
I think that would be helpful. Thank you. I have one final question, and then I'm going to suggest that we move on to the vote. We've mentioned the provision of cycle parking for residents already, which is great. But I noticed that there's only 4 short stay spaces proposed, which is for anybody who might be visiting all of those families and households. Is 4 enough?
Yeah, so this is, thank you, Chair. It's been reviewed by our LBN transport officer, and they've agreed that that is suitable number. But
it would mean, for example, if I ended up having friends in that development, if I wanted to visit them with my family by bike, we wouldn't be able to. At least, we could, but we'd have to find some railings or something to lock our bikes to.
I'm also, as part of this, there is a capacity for an additional 14 spaces. So there's 230, off the top of my head, I can't remember, they're in the communal stores, but then 14 additional spaces can be provided for the duplexes on the ground floor. So I think more provision, if members are so minded, although the current provision is suitable and London Plan compliant, that if you wish for more, sort of, they could look at the scope of that and we can secure that by condition to increase the number of visitor cycle parking spaces.
Yeah, I did notice the facility for additional ones to be installed within in the duplexes, and I just understood that would be for the use of the households within those homes, which is obviously great. But I always say it that visitor cycle parking tells people how we expect them to arrive and how we expect them to move around, and it is if you build it, they will come thing. And in the grand scheme of the development, a few extra Sheffield stands is not going to make or break really, but can really positively contribute. So perhaps I could just ask LBN housing colleagues to take that away. 4 might be London plan compliant, but it doesn't feel very compliant with large numbers of visitors to me.
Chair, just to add that we do have a condition, so that can be secured by that, and we can either word the condition in such a way just so to make sure that element is sort of brought forward. And that's part of the
I think that would be helpful, please. So with that, I'm going to suggest that we move to the vote. Can I perhaps ask you to share your screen again so that we can see the officer recommendation?
Yes, I'll do that now.
Thank you. Strategic Development Committee is asked to note the update and resolve to agree the reasons for approval and delegate authority as we usually would. Can I ask, please, those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. That is unanimous. Thank you all very much for your time this evening. The item 8 is the date of our next meeting, which is the 18th of April 2023. So I look forward to seeing you then, if not before. Thank you very much. Good night.